So now that the Acolyte is behind us, we know that those like Leslye, Headland, and Kathleen Kennedy have been involved in endless damage control mode and double down mode when it comes to their overall view of the ongoing criticism against the Acolyte, as well as the viewership decline. By the way, the viewership has been so bad, it didn't even enter into the top 10 Nielsen ratings. That's how bad the Acolyte viewership engagement levels really truly have been, and it really was a wake-up call for those over at the Walt Disney Company, such as Bob Iger and the Disney heads. This is exactly why we talked about this a couple of days ago, about how they took at least some form of action against Kathleen Kennedy after she lost out on her pay raise when it comes to her role as president of Lucasfilm. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So one thing about Kathleen Kennedy is that we know that she is a specific type of individual that will never admit failure, that will never, of course, own her mistakes or any kind of involvement in the deliberate agenda that is shoehorned into Star Wars, into Lucasfilm, mind you, as well, generally speaking. And this is where matters get even worse. Now, we know that Kathleen Kennedy is just one example of how wrong things can go with Disney Star Wars. At the very heart of it all, it's even beyond Bob Iger. This all dwindles down to the top 3 shareholders, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, that fund everything related to DEI and ESG getting thrown into Lucasfilm. Now, moving beyond all of this, we know that Kathleen Kennedy has been very bitter against the obvious fans that really do defend George Lucas's work. This is where things get interesting. Now, with the current status of Lucasfilm, already a major disaster, especially after the Acolyte Episode 8, failing to reverse the backlash and the damage that was done by the previous 7 episodes, one major development now has more to do with Kathleen Kennedy in the wake of her losing millions of dollars due to the Acolyte's failure. Kennedy recently delivered the following in the wake of her losing her pay raise from the Disney heads. I believe the greatest challenge that we are dealing with today in this industry, especially in our case with the Acolyte that Leslye worked so hard on, is that you are always going to deal with a loud side of any fandom. In this case with Star Wars, that just likes to make a lot of noise to create trouble for our loyal audience and core customer base. I find this to not only be disrespectful to the creators who worked on this series, but also it is wildly irresponsible behavior toward the fans that hold this passion for this brand, that is going in all sorts of new directions, that is going to, in a way, break free from George's vision of what Star Wars has to be. It is my mission to provide women more roles here at Lucasfilm, and what I find to be another challenge are those that claim that our support for women and everything to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion falls into some kind of an agenda, when this in reality is truly not the case at all. Both Lucasfilm and the Walt Disney Company are and never have been part of any agenda, period. And it is Lucasfilm's goal to provide anyone an opportunity to become a part of this galaxy far, far away. With our series, The Acolyte, that Leslye created so very well, I think after examining the criticism that we received, we still stand by our opinion that this is nothing more than a small margin of our core customer base that cannot be taken too seriously. In regard to Season 2 of The Acolyte, I am unwilling to make any comment on the status of that at all. Our support for diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that should be respected, and I can't stress this enough, that those that are opposed to this, I believe, are the same individuals that make it hard for women to find their place in this industry, especially in the roles attached to Star Wars, whether it's film or television programs for our Disney Plus streaming platform. Now guys, let me just pause here for 1 second before I move on. Now, this is an obvious lie by Kathleen Kennedy. She's obviously taking her anger out on the fans after what's been going on behind the scenes. We talked about this a couple of days ago. She is no longer getting her pay raise from $25 million annually to $40 million annually. Alright, she missed out on that opportunity. It was a combination of Bob Iger's cost containment plan that made that overall decision, as well as the underperformance of the Acolyte series, really putting a major dent, a major nail in the coffin as far as I'm concerned, in the overall Star Wars brand. Now, what's interesting about this, though, is that she claims that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and their ongoing support for just throwing women into lead roles in any Star Wars project just for the sake of doing so is not any kind of an agenda, and that it's just part of a narrative on the other side. That's what she claims, and that's what she believes in, and we all know that's absolutely untrue and just a complete lie by Kathleen Kennedy. This is the same thing, by the way, that Leslye Headland spewed out there multiple times, that there's no agenda here. Our support for diversity, equity, and inclusion, there's no agenda at all. Anything about that. And that just goes to show you that they will say whatever they have to say. They will lie through their teeth to really just string along the audience, or whatever's left of the audience that follows Star Wars. So this is what's interesting now, is that as we shift further and further away from the finale of The Acolyte that was disastrous as far as I'm concerned, I mean, they really got desperate by throwing in Darth, Plagueis, and Yoda. It only made things worse. I mean, that was the most underwhelming series of cameos that I have ever seen in Star Wars. Not only were they very short, but they were also, of course, done in a very cheap way. We all knew that this was done in a way to actually make fans crave for a season 2, and it really, led to a situation where it shot themselves into the foot. It really did. So, moving onwards, she goes on to conclude, women, in my experience, in this franchise in particular, have to deal with hardships of unnecessary criticism for the wrong reasons. We saw this in the previous films, and we are seeing it again in The Acolyte, and it is the most unfortunate thing that we have to deal with in this industry as we examine this year by year, and where we need to go to properly support DEI, and how it fits into the many aspects and projects that we have going on here at Lucasfilm as we aim to continue providing women roles, specifically lead roles. So this is something that she doubled down on yet again. She wants to endlessly shoehorn women into lead roles just for the sake of doing so. Now look guys, I am all for women getting lead roles in Star Wars. That's fine. I think it worked well with Jyn Erso in Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. No complaints there. I don't have a problem with that. But when you just do it for the sake of doing it, in a consistent way, that's where you really miss out on a proper story, proper character development. The execution is not there, the acting is not there. You don't get actors, and you don't get actresses in particular that have the credentials of really meeting that character and the requirements to make that character work in the story. So that's the problem. That's the overall problem over at Lucasfilm, and that's why I keep on saying every single time that they are the worst division under the Walt Disney Company. They are the most extreme division over the Walt Disney Company for that very given reason, is because of Kathleen Kennedy. Why she's still hired, I talked about this earlier. A lot of it does indeed, believe it or not, have to do with her husband, Frank Marshall, a very powerful figure in the Hollywood bubble that has a lot of ties with Bob Iger and the Disney executives. So overall, I would like to hear what everyone has to say about all this below in the comments. What do you have to say about The Acolyte Episode 8, the finale, Kathleen Kennedy's overall behavior against the fans, coming out of that overall, missed opportunity of her pay raise by the Disney heads? And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.